People who had considered themselves incels, involuntary celibates, but have since had sex. How do you feel looking back at your previous self? Never considered myself an incel wasn't a word that was commonly used, just an ugly, socially inept, horny teenage boy who girls didn't like. Now I'm an ugly, socially inept adult with a personality, and that seems to be working well so far. I didn't lose my V card until I was like 20, maybe 21. University was a blur. I used to not hate women, but just wouldn't really bother with the pursuit because in my mind, I'd already summed up the result: rejection. I was also, like, super thirsty, which nobody ever wants, and yeah, it was a bad look all around. Eventually became 0e depressed. Worked through some things with hallucinogens, yada yada, and now here I am, a little wiser and a little less annoying a person. Thanks for this thread. I read one on Reddit about a guy whose son became full incel, and that haunts me now. It's my biggest fear to raise a son who hates women. No kids yet, but hoping. Good to see that some people come out of that. I remember that thread. I follow the incel community out of curiosity, and it's so obvious to me that most of them are just young guys that haven't gotten laid yet, rather than being the deformed hunchbacks they perceive themselves to be. I'm good friends with a guy who used to be a part of a popular incel website, and he used to post on Reddit. That's actually how we met. He is still growing a lot as a person. He was incredibly angry. He blamed being ugly for his failure with women, and nothing anyone said could convince him that it wasn't that. It was that he thought that he would only be happy with a really hot girl. We hung out once and were talking about how he wanted to approach women out with us. We were at a very nice place, and the neighborhood had plenty of high-maintenance women. You know, the kind wearing expensive athleisure and who spent their entire lives dieting and doing spinning classes. Expensive hair and nails. All that. Women who were really dedicated to looking good. There were also the girls that worked there, and a few other customers about our age. He literally only saw the hot ladies. He was upset they'd never date anyone like him, someone who has pretty much no career ambition, doesn't want to conform by dressing or eating like they do, etc., and the average women in there just weren't women to him. It was really dehumanizing, because I saw him as an equal, and although he was sort of my friend, he didn't see me as human as he saw the hot ladies in Lululemon. He eventually saw a therapist. Actually, a few therapists. It was mostly to tell people he'd done it, but he stuck with it. Saw a few until one worked, and he started working on himself. We texted, emailed, etc., hung out a few times. But honestly, he wasn't working too hard on making friends, because he'd constantly say stuff that was belittling or mean just to hurt me or women in general, because he could. He also had spent too much time in black pill subreddits, because he brought it up on the one time I invited him out with my trivia team, a few months ago before I had some major health issues and the pandemic kicked off. He got back in touch. He sent me a long email that was actually okayish. He had briefly dated a woman, they had slept together, and then he realized he still actually hated women and her too, because she wasn't living up to his fantasy, and that no one could. He realized he had a lot of conflicting ideas, that women shouldn't depend on men for money, but they also shouldn't be too career-focused, etc. Just a lot of bad stuff all rolled up into one. He had included a bunch of stuff I absolutely hated, like the fact that he still feels that women our age are past their prime and have cellulite. I basically didn't have a ton of energy to reply other than to tell him I hoped he kept working at it and wasn't dating anyone else until he got over actively hating women. I looked back and realized how many times girls showed an interest in me and I didn't notice, or I self-sabotaged without realizing what I was doing. I eventually learned to get out of my own way, but I'm still working on not pushing away people because I'm scared if I don't reject them they will reject me, kind of thing. In high school I was 300 pounds and my only conversations were about video games, specifically World of Warcraft. I was nice to lots of girls. Thought I was the perfect gentleman like my mom taught me to be. I had female friends. However, I never could get a girlfriend or a girl interested in me, except for one time a girl dated me for 4 hours as a dare and then publicly dumped me in the lunchroom. This caused me to start to despise women. Eventually, I learned it was my terrible hygiene and excessive weight that was causing girls to not like me. I started going to the gym and got into great shape. Lost 110 pounds. Got a new style. Started dressing and smelling good. All of a sudden girls couldn't get enough of me when I went to college. Due to all the rejection I had in high school, I actually developed an addiction. I would date a different girl every month and was notorious for one-night stands. I looked at women as a game to fill my missing void. I couldn't get enough. This went on for years until I realized I had a problem. Now years later I am married and in decent shape but not gym obsessed like before. I still see myself as both people. The guy obsessed with video games and food and then the guy who loves working out and partying. As I type this it is odd reflecting on how I lived two different lives over 15 years. I was a virgin at 20 to 21 but wanted to have sex sooner. There was some bitterness in my heart towards women. I got on with working, playing rugby and not being fat ass and it turned around. Learned to have a conversation, not just trying to chat someone up or show the world how super I was. Married, 2 children, doing okay. I never really considered myself an incel at the time, mostly because I'd never heard the phrase, but I was very incelly in high school. I was the type of person who would hold a door open and then wonder why girls weren't falling into my lap. Turns out high school me wasn't that attractive and nice isn't a personality. I fell very much into the Chad's and Stacy's frame of mind for a while. A lot of things changed really, but mostly I just grew up. It's a super childish view of things and just doesn't take into account that the people around you are, well, people. If someone held a door open for you, you wouldn't throw yourself at them. It's about the maturity in relationships. But seriously, high school me. Still a virgin, but I used to call myself incel a couple years ago because I only knew it meant involuntary celibate. I didn't know any of the stuff about the black pill and the rampant misogyny. As soon as I actually discovered what it meant I stopped and felt ashamed. Also I did have a phase in high school during which I did believe some incel-ish stuff, but I just didn't have enough confidence to ever talk to someone I was interested in, so I never said any of the stuff out loud anywhere. I think I was maybe just a late bloomer. I had lots of female friends and was a bit geeky before it was cool. When I went to uni I realized that rejection wasn't as bad if I could laugh about it with my mates after. When I lost my V, it wasn't the big deal I thought it would be. Once that barrier was broken though, I really came into my own and never looked back. When you start coming into your own after coming in someone else, something has gone wrong. I see my younger self as in severe need of help I never got, although I did get plenty of criticism that was about as useful to me as an instruction manual written in Chinese. I had a span of self-induced loathing in my early 20s that had me in the same mindset as incels, minus the whole urge to kill and harass. But I blamed women for them not wanting to talk to me, for rejecting me. I believe someone up above talked about maturity and who they were in high school. I, too, was a D-bag. Decent looking guy but shit person. Shallow is a perfect adjective for my high school self. That whole viewpoint or self-importance carried into my early 20s and it didn't work out well. It wasn't until I was 27-28 and started getting into philosophy while getting stoned off my ass because I was escaping my problems. Philosophy changed me. It made me self-reflect and forced me to be honest with myself, to hold myself accountable and also to forgive myself for all the mistakes I have made and to realize I have the power to change, improve myself. That's when my incel, women blaming ended. I'm glad I survived that period of my life. I think a lot of what goes on is how relationships in our society are portrayed. Speaking for myself, a guy that grew up in the 90s, it always seemed that every movie the woman was the one needing saving and the way to a woman's heart was to be a gentleman. This whimsical fairy tale taught to us at an early age sets people up for false expectations of both roles in a relationship. There really is no teaching about how hard relationships are and that no relationship should be the reason you are happy. If I was taught that growing up maybe things would have been different for me, but that was a big personal problem for me. Trying to validate my happiness through a relationship left me wide open to get taken advantage of and pushed further into that toxic mindset. But, looking back, I'm glad I went through it. I finally found the love I've always wanted and I couldn't be happier. My relationships feel more real now and that I have a new realization and perspective on my relationships. I definitely look at women a lot differently now and have made multiple reach outs to some classmates from high school to apologize for how much of a pig I was. Is the perfect high school nickname for me. But yeah, incel mentality seems to come from the self-hatred, denial of one's own faults, flaws. Women are not sexual objects. You don't deserve their attention. They are human beings and deserve that respect. Once those moronic incels realize they wasted the best parts of their lives blaming others for their own failures instead of making changes that will be their greatest regret in life, knowing that all along, they had the power to change their situation. P.S. If you made it this far, wow, I'm impressed. Thanks for taking the time reading my comment. If anyone wants to chat, DM me. I know during these troubling times, lack of connection, social interactions can strain mental health. If you want someone to talk to or just vent to, hit me up. I have nothing better to do but chat it up and make friends. Alright. Cheers.